Welcome, folks. The Interior Department some years ago put up a plaque that said Act 1, Scene 1 of the unfolding drama that became the United States of America. April the 29th, we celebrate as the founding of this great nation hundreds of years ago. And today we begin our annual week of prayer. You'll see amazing stories of healings and miracles, and we invite you to pray along with us. Later on this program, we'll look back at a prayer from the year 1607 and see how that prayer shaped the nation that we know as the United States of America. But first in the news, a gunman attacks a synagogue in California, and the congregants of that synagogue fought back. One woman threw herself bravely in front of her rabbi, giving her life to protect his. Another worshipers chased the gunman into the street, and an 8-year-old girl who escaped Hamas rockets in Israel is shot in the leg. Shocking news from our nation's largest state. Jenna Browder has this.
President Trump called Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein to offer his condolences. At a vigil Sunday night, the rabbi said he was touched by the president's words. He then went on to describe the attack and the heroism of some of his congregants.
Unfathomable, where I faced death face to face.
The rabbi, who was injured himself, describes the moment the accused shooter opened fire.
I see the shooter standing there in position with the rifle, moving it towards me.
He says it was a miracle the shooter's gun jammed and credits members of the congregation for risking their lives to stop the attack.
Gushing blood and stuff. And he was like screaming my dad's name.
The youngest victim, 8-year-old Noya Duhan. 60-year-old Lori Kay died. Friends say she stepped in front of the rabbi to stop the gunman.
He dropped his weapon and he ran out, and I chased him out of the sanctuary.
Witnesses say 19-year-old John T. Ernest was chased out of the synagogue by 2 worshipers, including an off-duty Border Patrol agent who opened fire as he drove away, police arresting him about a mile away. Earlier, in a letter posted online under his name, he says he wanted to kill Jews and praised the gunman accused in both the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting and recent mosque attacks in New Zealand. Police say Ernest is also being investigated in connection to an arson attack at a California mosque.
We forcefully condemn the evil of anti-Semitism and hate, which must be defeated.
I think there's something particularly onerous about being gunned down in your place of worship.
This says anti-Semitism is on the rise in America and worldwide. Just this weekend, the World Jewish Congress calling out the New York Times for publishing a cartoon in its international edition showing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu leading a blind President Trump. Tweeting, the New York Times has crossed a red line today by publishing a cartoon infused with anti-Semitic tropes. The New York Times issued an apology. Michael Rydelnik, whose parents survived the Holocaust, is an expert on anti-Semitism at the Moody Bible Institute.
It's like a contagious disease that's always under the surface, and sometimes it spurs up into epidemic proportions, and then sometimes it recedes.
For young Noya, whose family recently moved from southern Israel, where her village was subject to rocket attacks from Gaza, and saw her home in California vandalized with anti-Semitic graffiti.
I don't really feel safe.
And the rabbi with this message.
Terrorism will not win, but peace and love will.
Ernest has been charged with murder and will likely face federal hate crime charges as well. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Benjamin Disraeli was the Prime Minister of England under Queen Victoria. And the Queen asked him, Mr. Prime Minister, what evidence can you give us of the existence of God? And his answer was, the Jew, Your Majesty, because this is the race that has been the witness to the power of the God of the Bible. And we study the Bible, we study the Old Testament, New Testament. These are Jewish books. And why is there anti-Semitism? Because there's a Satan who hates God, and he hates God's people. And he knows that the evidence of the existence of God flows in large part from his prophets who had his sacred book, the Jewish people. So I condemn anti-Semitism and recognize its source. And we have stood with Israel for years and years. We have been defenders, we've been helpful, and we'll continue to do so. And we'll raise our voice against these senseless attacks and the hatred that is inspired by Satan himself. Well, back to the news. One of the most powerful lobbying groups in the United States is called the National Rifle Association, the NRA. And my good friend, Ollie North, has just resigned as president of the NRA after an internal feud with the CEO. John Jessup has more on that.
That is right, Pat. Oliver North told the NRA board in a letter that he won't be renominated president, this after a dispute with longtime CEO Wayne LaPierre. In his own letter to the board, LaPierre claimed North tried to pressure him into resigning, writing, quote, "The exhortation was simple, resign or there will be destructive allegations made against me and the NRA." North had previously sent a letter to the board's executive committee raising questions about LaPierre's handling of finances and sought to form a crisis committee to investigate. Well, a new study confirms obesity increases the risk of disease and early death. The study looked at 2.8 million adults in the UK over a period of 18 years. It found obese people are more likely to have heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and irregular heartbeat. Obesity is defined as body mass of 30 or more, which means being 30 pounds or more overweight. The study found people with a body mass index of 30 to 35 have a 70% higher risk of heart failure and are 5 times more likely to get type 2 diabetes. The study also found the more overweight a person is, the higher the likelihood of disease. And Pat, the study's author also noted that the worldwide obesity rate has more than tripled in the last 30 years.
Well, I have looked at the cause, and we have studied it together, and I think that the culprit is what's called high fructose corn syrup. But let's go to our CBN News medical reporter, Laurie Johnson, who's with us. Laurie, talk to us about, we've studied together the whole idea of inflammation. What is causing this epidemic of obesity? People are just, they're not just a little overweight, they're morbidly obese.
That's right. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Pat. It's high fructose corn syrup, or in a broader sense, it's two things: sugar and processed food, which are basically the same thing, because we know that processed food often turns to sugar. And one of the worst ingredients in processed food is high fructose corn syrup. This stuff, from a food manufacturer's point of view, is a dream come true. But from a health perspective, it is our worst nightmare. High fructose corn syrup is like sugar on steroids. It is so much cheaper than sugar. It is so much more easily added to everything in our grocery stores, and it is highly, highly addictive. So we need to get off of this stuff, Pat.
Well, I totally agree. How do people get free of it, though? It's in everything.
I love that. That's a great question. In fact, I interviewed a physician in New York City, Dr. Vincent Pedre, and the story is on our website, cbn.com, and he helps people break their sugar addiction. You know that they did studies on mice, and the mice preferred sugar to cocaine. That's how addictive it is. It gets in your brain and the dopamine receptors and the pleasure centers. But just like other drugs, you have to go through a withdrawal period where you really want it for a certain period of time. But the good news is, after 3 or 4 days, a week, 2, 3 weeks tops, you stop craving it so much. And we need to replace the sugar and the processed food with fiber, because fiber is so essential for our gut microbiome. And the sugar destroys our gut microbiome. Our gut microbiome controls all of our health functions, including our brain. You know, we talk about diabetes, that doubles your chance for Alzheimer's.
Well, you know, Laurie, I know little children have very sensitive palates, and they don't need a lot of extra salt, and they certainly don't need a lot of extra sugar, but their parents don't understand that. And so we have, you know, it's incredible how much sugar is being fed to little kids. I mean, the cereal industry is just loaded with sugar.
That's true. Those cereals are the worst. And let's face it, sugar, like so many other addictive drugs, makes us happy going down, and parents want to make their kids happy. But, and we like to be happy. It does give you that temporary high, but in the long run, it hurts us, and parents need to be aware of this.
Well, Lori, I appreciate what you're doing. God bless you. We enjoy your insights always. And
my pleasure.
You know, I'm pleased to report I've lost 50 pounds. I wear a whole lot less than I did when I was 15 years old. When I was boxing, I was boxed heavyweight at 185 pounds, and I'm down considerably below that now.
Yeah, you keep having to have your jackets in.
Oh yeah, they've cut them down like crazy. But you know, the secret, very frankly, is don't eat. I'm not going to tell you some diet, but you know, protein. Fiber, what Gloria was saying is protein, fiber, and stay off of that sweet stuff. I mean, it is a craving, it is an addiction, and you know, you can be free. Like a habit, folks, just take 21 days and you can establish a good habit or you can establish a bad habit. 21 days.
You know what I had for dinner last night? Seared venison.
Seared venison?
That my husband shot.
A deer?
Yes.
Bambi is no longer in the woods because you...
But it's the best, it's the leanest, most tasty meat.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't overcook it.
Yeah.
Had it with the salad and a few tater tots. But anyway, you've got to have
venison.
a little bit of
Well, not everybody can get venison, but wildlife, of course, is obviously... But here again, they give antibiotics to chickens on a regular basis, so we've got antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And then, in terms of beef, they're fed hormones in order to make them fat and grow. And so when you eat a lot of that beef, you're getting hormones which make you fat. And it's in the milk, it's in all, well. But folks, you can come free, and that's the big thing.